Welcome to the Achieve Today podcast, where you will learn valuable insights, tips that work, and expert advice on how to overcome your limiting beliefs and awaken your greatness, not tomorrow, but today. My name is Jake Mix, and I am your host again for this podcast episode, where we are going to be covering communication again. Now, I say again because we have Mr. Jed, who has been a coach with us at Achieve Today for a couple of years now, right?
Yep, that's right.
And you've been on the show now here, and we've had a podcast episode on communication, and so we're going to do a little bit of a recap there with some of these questions. But first of all, how are you doing?
Good. I guess I didn't scare anyone off from the first one, huh?
You didn't.
I got on camera, and the furry face didn't drive anyone.
That's right. Yes.
Away, so
yeah, that's true. You didn't have to shave your beard, which is good.
Good. I want to keep it going. So awesome.
Yep. And I've gotten some feedback from your first video, and one of the things that I noticed most commonly is people are like, I just wanted to watch like 5 or 6 minutes of it. I ended up watching the whole 30 minutes. Like, it was so good. I learned so much. So I'm excited. We talked a lot about body language, and we'll talk a little bit more, obviously, about that kind of stuff. So let's get right into it. We'll just kind of continue the discussion. But first of all, I want to really start by giving some practical ways that someone can improve their communication skills. Like, what are some really, really practical, important steps and things that people can do to improve their communication day by day?
Yeah, so my journey of becoming a communication expert was, and my loved ones, when they see this, if they see it, will probably, you're not an expert by any means. We always fight.
Yeah.
But from where I started to where I am now, I'm dang good at what I I do. So a couple things just off the top of my head is interpreting instead of understanding. A lot of times when people are speaking back and forth, and you got that tennis match thing going on, instead of listening and trying to understand, they're interpreting what the person says. If they're running their own negative programs and they're running things that with their biases, they're going to be a little grumpy, and they're going to misinterpret, and they're going to take offense, and all these things I'm going to teach you on the podcast today. That's going to make it go downhill instead of uphill. You know.
Yeah.
So I focus on intention versus attention. So whether it's law of attraction type stuff or personality attraction, you have to have intention first, and the intention's got to be well-intentioned first, and then you put attention on that second. So if you do that with the law of attraction or personality attractions, you're going to have more plus signs than minus signs because your intentions are good. And so that helps with the stories. They're not trying to tick me off or make me angry. They're not trying to hurt me or insult me or embarrass me. My loved ones, my friends, my coworkers, they would never do that. And so the intention's good there to start with, and then you put attention on what you want, which is to have a nice, ping pong conversation back and forth. If you have attention first, because we're mostly running negative programs, you're going to see those negative things. You're going to have minus signs with the law of attraction and minus signs with personality attraction. And then sometimes there's not even any intention. They're just going off of script and program and getting hit by all the variables of an external world.
Right.
So that's the first thing. With the first thing you ought to understand when it comes to communication is Nikola Tesla taught that if you want to understand everything there is to know in the universe, you first have to understand how energy works and frequency and vibration works, because you got to have the ebb and flow with everything you do, and that especially happens with people. The 4 agreements is a great place to start. Be impeccable with your word. Don't assume. Don't take things personal. That one alone will change your whole life if you don't take things personal in a conversation. And then the 4th one, my favorite, is do your best. Whether you're the garbage man picking up garbage on the side of the road or you're a banker dealing with $1 million accounts, do your best and be committed to activating the relationships around you and the work around you so that you go forward and upward. The other one is, and with that one too, you're predictable, right? So if you're doing those things where people can predict your behavior and it's positive most of the time, then the trust is going to be there. And so what happens is if the trust is there, then you have that love connection and you can move forward with any kind of project, chore, goal that you have with that other person. The 7 habits I've used for years and years. The first 3 habits are great for managing yourself, but the second group of 3 are designed to help you manage other people. So seek first to understand, then be understood. My grandmother, she would say, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. So usually in fights and arguments, people are having these conversations where they're like, you're not listening to me, you don't hear me. All you care about is you, not me. It's me, me, me. But if you go towards that person and say, now when you say this, it sounds like you're saying blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. Is that what you meant?
Yeah. Give
them that opportunity to say, no. What I meant was ding-a-ding-a-ding, bada, 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 and then you can have that clarification, The next one is synergize, and bring out the best in other people. Your strengths and their strengths make the team overall stronger as a whole. And also think win-win, which is always geared around it's not you win and I lose where I'm the doormat, and it's not I win and you lose where I treat you like a doormat. It's mutual benefit where we both come away happy with the situation and the agreement and the goals and even the contract that we put together, or however you want to do that. So a few ways to really improve skills. Right off the bat, never talk over the top of somebody. We have those people, and it's not really they're trying to be rude, but I think their mind works so fast they're afraid they're going to lose a thought and not interject it because it's so great and so important for you to hear it. So they accidentally talk over the top of people. Have you had people like that in your life?
Oh, yeah.
It happens?
Yeah. I've probably done it a couple times too.
Yeah, we all do it.
Yeah.
So just being mindful of that, and also don't finish other people's Sandwiches. I got you, the earworm. That's that's the same thing as don't finish other people's sentences. Allow them to finish their thought. Paraphrase back to them. Now, what I'm hearing you say is bada bada bada. Is that what you mean? And then let them correct that if they need to.
Yeah.
And listen actively. That's active listening, just repeating back to them what they said, but changing it up a little bit. Maintaining eye contact. We did talk about on the last clip, analog communication, voice tone, tonality, volume, body language is huge. We talked about just being able to be present with the person,
Yeah.
So those 5 alone can really make things very practical. Some other things just really quickly for that first question is learn those basics of nonverbal communication. It's 93% of all communication. And the words we actually use are only like 7% on our last time I checked. So on that video, I think I gave you like the little thing I wrote out. Yeah, I didn't say you did it,
Yeah.
We did
I
that,
do
right?
remember that.
So go back to that and see that. That's a great exercise for people. Sometimes you have to over-communicate, which sounds weird, but a lot of times people don't think they're saying, or they think they're saying too much, so they actually say less. And with that, you have the ability to assume that maybe they're hearing it a different way. So we got auditory learners, we've got visual learners, we've got kinesthetic learners. So these people really need to be able to hear the different styles of communication so that it gets intrinsic in a part of who they are. Avoid relying on visual aids as much as possible. I like to storytell. And I don't know how much longer we have on the podcast, but I could tell you stories all day long with every single principle that I teach because I love stories, And that's a form of visualization for your imagination, right? Ask for honest feedback when you talk with people. What did you think about that? What did you like? What's your gold nuggets? What don't you like? And get honest feedback so you don't have to take offense later if you get criticized, but you're already in that mindset of correcting your own course as much as you can. Engage the audience in discussion, ask them what they think, start with key points and don't get lost. Sometimes say what you're going to say right up front, and then even at the bottom, repeat and summarize so that you can tie it all together. And it's cognitive. People are with you while you're talking with them, and they don't start thinking about and daydreaming about all their responsibilities they have that day. You can keep them in your conversation. Master the art of timing. You ever listen to comedians like Chris Rock and those guys? Comedians are great at timing and waiting for the punchline to sit in before they go to the next thing. you almost have to have that same skill set as a comedian or a presenter or a professional speaker, because timing is everything also, so you don't lose people, in your conversations. So master the art of timing, getting comfortable speaking. It's called extemporaneously. It's basically you're making bullet points, like a lawyer when they go to court. They're not going to memorize everything they say to the jury, but they're going to make talking points to go off. So it's okay to have a checkoff list, especially if you have to have a deep conversation with somebody. And getting to know your audience. The way I speak to you might be different than I speak with another coworker.
Yeah.
So you got to know that person. Add novelty to the audience, the storytelling, the joke telling. One time when I first got married, I had to speak in church. And when you speak in church, you got to tell a joke at the beginning, because that's what we do in our culture, right?
Yep.
So the Saturday before the Sunday, I first started paintballing, but we didn't have the protective gear. We just had shop glasses from 8th grade, and we had just pistols, but my friend shot me right in the lip, and it fattened my lip, and I could only talk like this like the whole time. And so I had to go speak in church. So I interjected that as, so the bishop told us we were going to talk in church, and I just accepted it. My wife wasn't home. So when she got home, great news, honey, we get to say a talk on Sunday. And then she got mad and punched me in the mouth. So that's why I got the fat lip. And everyone laughed, but then some of them were like, yeah, she'd probably really smack you. So I didn't know if I was kidding or not.
Yeah, maybe that was serious.
So, add a little levity when you speak, to keep it light, novelty. But mostly be a listener, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, right?
Yep.
Can you imagine if he gave us 2 mouths and 1 ear? Nobody get a word in edgewise, right?
Yeah, it'd be kind of frustrating.
So those are main practical ways to really engage that person, whether they're a loved one or just anyone on the street, and you'll have a chemical and chemistry connection, so that it's a good even ebb and flow.
I like that. Well, that was a ton of them. That was a ton of great tips and tricks. One thing that we teach you to achieve today is just pick one of them, right? Pick one and start working on it. There's so many things that you can do. You don't have to get it all in one day. A lot of these things have taken a long time for you, Jed, I'm sure. It hasn't been, a one-day process. It's been probably several years. So, well, good. Well, let's get into some questions, because last time I had you on, there were a couple of students that did ask some questions about communication. And I think because there's so many different ways of communication and communication tips, it might be better to just go specifically into these questions. Yeah. So are you good with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, good. So we're going to go right into them after, seeing all the practical tips you gave. Obviously, there's many ways to work on this kind of stuff. But so the first question is, how do I improve my communication skills being an introvert?
Yeah, that's interesting, because an introvert is seeing their world. They're taking in information and then dissecting that and analyzing it. Yeah. All from the inside. And whereas extroverts, we are stimulated by the outside world. And so a couple things. An introvert, first of all, they think they're shy. And they can be shy, but it doesn't necessarily mean they are shy. They're just taking it in, and they'd prefer to be the wallflower, right, against the wall, and observe more. But they see what's invisible. That's the power of the introverts. They see things that are invisible, meaning they see things that are within. Invisible, we think it's like clear or see-through, but it just means it's only visible from within. So welcome that superpower you have, that gift and trait that you have. And then, the second thing is, think about an extrovert and analyze them, because you're good at analyzing. What does an extrovert do? And how do they act? And they put themselves out there. So then you got to become a student of the extrovert, and then you got to basically do the opposite of you and do what the extrovert does. And so if you're standoffish and don't really put yourself out there, walk right up, introduce yourself. Hey, my name's Jedediah. I'm loyal, I'm courageous, affable. I help people get unstuck and out of pain. How you doing? What can I do for you today? And they're like, no way am I going to do that. But if they don't practice that and don't do that, then they will stay in that rut, and they won't expand. So you got to push yourself out of your comfort zone and get used to doing it so it becomes natural. So I'm actually both. I'm 50% extroverted and introverted because I've understood people and became a student of people for so long.
Yeah.
So I can chameleon and mesh with any group in society because it's been a survival mechanism for me personally, but of course now it helps me in the business that I'm in. So just if you don't do it, you won't learn it. So push through the pain and the awkwardness and the comfort zone, and just love yourself and believe in yourself and start doing it.
That's cool. Did you start out being more introverted or extroverted, or you always been 50-50?
I was probably more introverted starting out, like as a little kid.
Cool.
And then in my comfort zones, I had become a class clown and stuff in school with my tight group, right?
Yeah.
But I had like my upbringing. I was raised by farmers, cowboys, truck drivers, and mountain men. So I was raised, kids were to be seen and not heard a lot of times.
Yeah.
Once I became my own man, living under my own roof with my own rules, like I was always told I was under someone else's, all of a sudden I became an extrovert, and my whole family, including my wife, was like, who in the heck is this person? This is not who I married or grew up with. But we blossom at our own rate,
Yeah, so you really had to push yourself. And
Yep.
Well, that's cool. So it is possible. It is possible to really get out of your comfort zone and get to that place, which is cool. Well, cool. Okay, so number 2 question. In some social situations, and I think I probably relate to this one, I feel like I shut down and can't communicate as I usually do. It's almost as if my insecurities are in the way. How do I get past that and talk like a normal human being? I love this one.
A normal human being? Well, yeah, our insecurities make us problematic people, right? My insecurities, I'm going to project all of the fear programming with those onto you. And if I'm in the victim mindset mode and I'm in pain and anger and suffering and self-sabotage, it's all going to be your fault. Because there's no way I'm going to be responsible for my own pain and suffering. Do you think I want to act this way? Do you think I want to be angry? Do you think I want to be ticked off? It's got to be your fault, right? Yeah. So our insecurities make us problematic people. So again, you got to shift your mindset and reprogram. You got to override the programs and even write new scripts, just like a computer programmer would do. You do that with affirmations. You do it with self-love. You do it with Ho'oponopono. You do it with the 3-step process, all these great tools that we teach, so that you can love yourself, you can have a healthy ego, a healthy self-esteem, you can present yourself, but most importantly, rather than trying to find yourself and find your joy and your happiness and your purpose, you make and create yourself right here in the present moment. You create your purpose, you create your joy, you create your happiness. They say the unalienable rights that we have in our Declaration of Independence is the pursuit of, or having life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I want to change that last one to, instead of being in the pursuit of happiness, it's really about being happy while you're in the pursuit, because that's going to change your whole paradigm shift. And then the more you become solid and love yourself, and you're okay with being weird and all of your quirks, the things that you're working on, now you're secure and you're a safe place actually for other people in your life to therapeutically nurture themselves and work on themselves. And then instead of triggering one another, you're actually assisting one another in your own personal progress. So you have to reprogram. And that's what we focus on here at Achieve Today, and that I love, because I thought I was pretty dang good at this stuff before I came here and worked with you guys. Yeah. And all you've done is taken my existing talents and the things I was secure about and magnified those literally like 100-fold working for this company. And then my weaknesses, I thought I was too prideful or thought I was okay with the weaknesses. Like, no, I can turn those into strengths. So instead of being weak and strong, we become strong. And that's the progress through the, not just this life, but spiritually through the eternities. Yeah. And that's what every person has to get right with themselves.
Jeez. Okay. Wow. That's cool. And so what would be like the first step to that? Like, I know this could be a pretty loaded question here. Yeah. But let's say someone needs to work on themselves to get comfortable in front of anyone. Do you have any advice there?
Yeah. So as a coach, we have the 5 steps of creation. And number 1 is sort out and identify what you don't want. emotionally, vibrationally, materialistically. And that includes what you don't like and what you're insecure about and what's not working in your life. And I focus on the what works principle, meaning, well, if this doesn't work and this does work, where are you going to gravitate, right?
Yeah.
So if it works, do it. If it quits working, then you got to tweak it up, fix it up, adapt and overcome. But own it. And once you own your sins, your vices, your problems, your mistakes, your insecurities, when you own those things, you're no longer a slave. You're free. You're a free man or you're a free woman. And no one can hold them over your head. They can't manipulate you. They can't have power over you. And the things themselves can't have power over you.
Yeah.
And so then it's like, yeah, I did that. Yeah, I screwed up. Yeah, I made that mistake. I'm working on it. In fact, I'm going to do the opposite of it. So like for me, I don't do well with criticism because my mode of happiness is like an ENFP. I'm the inspire on the Myers-Briggs.
Oh, yeah.
My mode of happiness is seeing other people happy. So if you're happy, Jed's happy, which that's a very reactive type of personality if you're unhealthy. But if you're not happy with what I've done, then I've grown to be like, well, it's your life. I can't make you be happy, and I can be neutral now and move at it. But if you're unhappy with me and you're blaming me and you're criticizing me for something, now you in the past, and some of you that might know me that see this, we've had some talks, we've had some issues. But I don't want to be reactive, and I don't want to be a person that's known as volatile when he gets criticized. So if I felt like there was beef between you and I, as coworkers or friends, I would then go to you and say, hey, Jake, can I talk to you a minute? Are you open to feedback? And you'd say yes or no, right? Yep. So let's say you said yes. And I said, okay, so is there anything that I do that like bugs you or is a pet peeve or you'd like me to change or do better, do more of?
Yeah.
Now I've given you permission. I'm vulnerable, and I've given you permission to tell me flat out, if you're brave enough, what you want to see different with me and what I'm doing behavior-wise. And you might tell me something that I totally disagree with. And maybe it's true and I'm wrong, but I'm just not mature enough yet to work with it. And so I can still say, Jake's up in the night, and I can let it go like water off a duck's back.
Yeah.
And then, but at least you and I are having a good, solid conversation, but you also feel validated and trust me because I loved you enough and I cared for you enough to come to you and broach you about my own problems and insecurities. And that's when you tear down everything that we do with personal development, you will never progress unless you can start having difficult conversations with people. That's the number one thing foundationally, is to be able to have hard, difficult conversations with people, especially people that you love.
Yeah.
I can say whatever I want to a stranger on the street. I may never even see him again. But when you come home through the door and you're mean-mouthing the ones that love you and trust you the most, you can't exist in that type of a vacuum. So you have to have hard conversations with love and caring and understanding where everyone's lifting each other and going the same direction.
Jeez. Well, that's cool. Man, it's crazy how I have these coaching interviews, right? And even just with the last one, Dana, she mentioned the same thing, hard conversations, right? It's like, and it all starts with you, which is so cool about this whole thing. It doesn't take months and months to develop. I mean, obviously it might develop a relationship with someone, but you can make peace within like today, which is a really, really cool concept. So I love that. And hard conversations are, I think, something we talked a little bit about last time as well.
That, for me, it's like primary objective number one. Yeah. Because me loving people and wanting to be happy, my insecurities also made me shut up when I should have spoke up. Yeah. And sometimes I did things I shouldn't have done just because I wanted to keep the peace and keep everything copacetic. I don't want to step on any toes or make waves, and now I'm like rocking the boat, and I say, I'm going to dump this sucker, but I'll help you back into the boat once we fix things. Yeah. And that was, for me, one of the most empowering things I've ever done for myself, to love myself and to have courage. When I introduced myself, hey, my name's Jedediah, I'm loyal, courageous, and affable. Loyal was something I knew I had for myself. Affable, meaning I love people and people usually love me back. That's what other people say about me as a strength. But the courage was something I had to develop within myself because I knew that I was lacking courage in my life and it wasn't. I could wrestle a grizzly bear. It's not like that. I can walk home on a broken leg. It's not that kind of courage. It's actually me being afraid I'm offending someone, or I'm thinking that they're going to think I don't like them. So I had to change that within myself.
Wow. Wow. That's cool. Man, okay, this is awesome. So let's go on to the next one because I think it somewhat relates to what we've been talking about.
Okay.
How do I communicate better with my family and my parents when the relationship isn't that great?
Wow. So I've been working with families in crisis since 1994.
Wow.
And I'll tell you what, the first story was I was a tracker, meaning these kids were in foster care or the program. They couldn't live with their own family, decided to have a foster family. A tracker, I was like the grandpa or the uncle that would come visit them 5 to 10 hours a week. And if they're doing good in school and they're cleaning their rooms at home, then during that time I could take them miniature golfing or bowling and stuff like that. And so I was like, wow, I get paid to go dink around and go to the movies. That's great, you know. But if they were a little bit naughty, then I could be the heavy hand, say, well, we can't go have fun. In fact, I got to take your music and your CDs away. You're grounded. So that saved the parents from being the heavy hand, right?
Yeah.
So I could do either. I could wear either hat. So this one kid, I had to transport him from St. George to Salt Lake, and he was in big trouble. He had done some stuff. And I worked with these really big, giant Polynesian, like a whole football team of Polynesians were the runners of this program. And so I'm driving this kid up to him because he's in trouble. And I start talking with him from St. George to Cedar City, which was 45 minutes. He didn't say a word to me. He was mad. He was angry. I'm just authority too, even though at this time I was like only 21 years old. And at Cedar City, I broke him. And we started talking about life. And Mr. ENFP over here, I was inspiring him to do better. And we were going to talk about college he'd go to and getting out of the gangs and the drugs and talking about where to go with his life. And he was like, is there any way you could be my advocate and track me? I go, yeah, I'll definitely put in that I want to work with you and help you out. And so we were laughing, and I wasn't even supposed to let him get out and use the bathroom at a gas station because he was a run risk. And at Beaver, I let him get out, or Fillmore, one of these cities, and I trusted him, and he didn't run, and I got him back in the car without handcuffing him and all that. Made these great connections with this kid for 5 hours in the car. Got to Salt Lake. We pull up. There's the team of Samoans and Tongans
just waiting,
ready, and I could see his body language just drop, and his head go down. And all of this work that I done, they rip the car door open, grab him, pull him out, and just all of them at once start yelling at him. And all that work I did with him was just dashed to pieces, and I never saw the kid again. So empathy is the biggest thing with families, and you know, all the time people are frustrated with each other, all the time, not just sometimes. So you got to focus on seeking first to understand, and then be understood second. Understand that person's point of view before you expect them to understand yours. If you gravitate and give that as a gift, you're always going to cultivate a chemistry of respect. So like for me, I'm different than the world. I don't make anyone earn my love. I don't make anyone earn my respect, and I don't make anyone earn my trust. The world wants you to earn all those things first, right? Yep. But I give it as a gift, knowing that humans are humans, and I might even get stabbed in the back when I do that. But knowing that, I'm ready to have that hard conversation to define the relationship. Okay, I gave you my trust, I gave you my love, I gave you my respect, and you did this thing. This isn't going to work out. So moving forward, I need a covenant, a promise from you that you're going to give back what I'm putting in. And it's a relationship's not 50-50 where you stop in the middle. It's 100-100. It's all the way to your side, all the way to my side. That's the only way a relationship's going to work. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And if someone's not committed 100-100, then you're going to have a lot of bumps in the road. Wow. You know? Yeah. So so with that person too, use those practical guides that I went through in the beginning of this, you know, all those things that I said, and you're going to become a relationship master within your own paradigm shift where you have a sphere of influence in your universe. Wow. You know? Yeah. So
like the positive things that can happen when you do have the hard conversations. What are some of the blessings and the gifts that can come from that?
Well, for me, it's understanding that pain is not death. And that's one thing, like your brain and your body and your skull is this wonderful organ. It's a marvelous organ.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a negative organ because its job, it has two functions. And I'm not a doctor. I can't tell you how the brain works, but I've studied the brain enough. I can tell you why it works. And why it works is because it serves two functions. One, it's a recording device. It remembers everything. And two, it just keeps you alive. So anything painful, it's going to say, hey, remember that time you almost died when you stuck your penny in the light socket? Don't do that again, right?
Yeah.
And so anything painful, the brain interprets as death, and so it says, get away from that. And so it's in our conversation. If I'm cold, I'm freezing to death. If I'm hot, I'm roasting in an oven. I'm going to die of the heat and wilt away.
Right.
My headache's killing me, my back's killing me, my feet's killing me. So what you say is basically indicative of what's going on inside of you. Are you really going to die if you're cold? No. You get a coat on. If you're hot, drink some water, get in the shade, take a pain pill. So what is pain really? This is, now for those of you that are working on yourself, what is pain? Well, all pain is growth and development. And you got to push through the pain, and then you move up the ladder. And so for me, to answer your question, when I interpret pain as just data and information, suddenly I feel less pain. When I interpret the data and the information as stepping stones to growth, suddenly I see and interpret my growth and my development. If I see growth and development and less pain, then that means life in general is much better. And then there's your personal development cycle rather than the pain and racket cycle that takes you down. You move up instead of down and backwards.
Wow.
So that for me is, I welcome pain.
Yeah.
As I'm 45 years old and I got hip problems and knee problems, I'm doing the Joe Dispenza stuff. I'm talking to my body. Hey, I don't need to feel the pain hip. I know that there's no cartilage in there and you got arthritis, but I just need you to hold the ligaments and the muscles together so I can walk upright, and I have less people asking me if I'm okay all day long because I gimp around and have the hitch, But I just, people ask me, when are you going to get a hip replacement? And I'm like, I'm not. Ever? Like, and the doctors laugh at my x-rays. They say, I've never seen a worse hip. I've seen hips half as bad as yours getting full hip replacements. And I just honestly don't feel that way. In the beginning, when I first started working here, I was actually considered getting a handicap parking spot because it was so awful just to walk in the door.
Oh my.
But using our teachings, our clearings, Joe Dispenza stuff, I maybe it's all in my head, but I feel less pain. I even run. We went skiing, we went snowboarding, I was feeling my butt muscle the other day. I got like a giant bicep in this butt muscle, so maybe my body is, adjusting to it or whatever. But I don't need to focus on the pain. I just need to get that information for growth and development and focus on. I don't want to be crippled. I want to be upright. I want to walk. I want to have a normal life and function like a normal person in my life.
Wow.
That's personal development.
Yeah. That's cool. And I'd rather be on the upswing than the downswing, right?
Yeah.
The positives and negatives.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. So let's go over one more question here from one of our students. So it is, how do I communicate with my partner when I don't feel like they are understanding what I'm saying? This situation can be really frustrating sometimes.
Yeah. And again, all the time, right? So
yeah.
So I use, any of these skills where seek first to understand, then be understood. Yeah. Basically what's happening is there's a wire getting crossed or not connected somewhere. And there's different languages that we speak. Dr. Gary Chapman has the 5 love languages. Now he's got the 5 apology languages. So for instance, my wife, we both share secondary quality time. So there's quality time, acts of service, words of affirmation, gifts, and physical touch.
Yeah.
So we both have quality time as our secondary, which is great.
Yeah.
But her primary is acts of service, and my primary is physical touch because I'm a guy. Most guys are physical touch, primary or secondary, and I've only seen a few that are tertiary physical touch. So so when I come home and she's like, hey, I did your laundry and folded your socks and underwear and put them in the drawer for you. She's telling me I love you because I did that for you, honey. Mm-hmm. And it's not my love language, right? My primary, but I'm like, hey, thank you. Now I can find my socks and underwear in the dead of night if I gotta leave for a graveyard shift somewhere or something. And
yeah.
So I'm still grateful and stuff. But to her, she's really showing me she loves me. And then for me, if I'm hugging on her and kissing her and mauling her, you know, that's not her love language. And she's like stiff arming my face and saying, no, not right now. We got things to do. It's just one more job I got to do, right?
Yep.
But I'm like, but I love you, you know? So, and if she pushes me away, I feel rejected. If I don't appreciate her, she feels rejected. So really, you got to speak the language to the other person. So if I come home, instead of like plopping in my dad chair and turning on the TV or getting on Facebook, I say, hey, I'm home. Does anyone need help with homework? Is there anything I can do? What do you need help with? Acts of service. And, you know, if I run the vacuum, if I take out the garbage, especially if I clean the toilet, holy cow, she's like so happy with me because I'm speaking her language. And then for me, it doesn't even have to be anything real intimate or even sexual. It's if she gives me a peck on the cheek and a slap on the rear, I'm charged. My whole day, I'm like, wow, my wife loves me.
Yeah.
You know, a hug, she loves me, right? And so you got to speak each other's language because otherwise it's going to sound like meh, 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 and then the other one's like blah 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 blah, and you're getting no communication.
Right.
You've got color codes by Dr. Hartman. You got people that operate off of peace, people that operate off of joy, people that operate off of love, and people that operate off of empowerment and advancement. So some of us are those type of chemicals and chemistry. And then the Myers-Briggs stuff, where you got 16 different combinations of introvert, extrovert, sensing, intuition, feeling, thinkers, judgers, perceivers. So the more you're a student of these things with people, the more you can understand the other person. And if you feel understood by me, Jake, I guarantee you're going to be magnetized towards me.
Yeah.
And vice versa, right?
Yeah.
So that's the main thing. You have to understand that other person. You have to love them enough to speak their language to them and not expect them to speak yours to you, but you put yours out first. And the whole other side of the coin with this is until you literally believe that that other person has only the best intentions for you because they love you, you're going to have problems with them. But if the story is they love me, they're my family member, they're my friend, they're my coworker, they'd never try to hurt me, they'd never try to embarrass me, then you can muscle through the miscommunication stuff and have good, clear energy in your communication, your love for each other, the connection that you're making. And so it's all your story that's going on with that reprogramming that we talked about earlier.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I love how it all kind of recaps what is it? Seek not to
be understood, but to understand first.
To understand.
Yeah. Seek first to understand, then be understood.
Okay.
So my grandmother's was nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care.
I like that one too.
Yeah.
I've heard that before.
Just one last thing. For years and years, I would use this video in my groups with teenagers and troubled teens and families called Buck, and he was the guy that Robert Redford made the Horse Whisperer movie after.
Oh, okay.
So he was abused as a little kid. Him and his brother by his dad was an alcoholic. He got put into foster care, and he got put in a ranch in Montana. And he learned to break horses without spurring them and whipping them and kicking them and all these devices where the horse's head was tied down so it couldn't buck. And he learned to just go off of a gentle feel and a touch with these horses. And so because he was so successful at it, people came to him to get help with their horses. And he learned pretty quick that he thought he was helping people with horse problems. Turns out he's helping the horses with the people problems. So he had his own form of personal development just being a rider, right? But he taught there's three things that all living things need, not just humans, but all living things need. The first thing is they need to have purpose. They need a job to do. So if you've got purpose, and that's one of the things we coach on, create your purpose. Don't go find it. Create it right here, right now, off your gifts and talents and traits that God's blessed you with. So if you have a job to do and you've got purpose, you're already pretty solid, right, with that alone. The second thing is you need to be a part of a family or a system or a group. And every one of us click with different groups, right? So make sure you're clicking with the right group that's positive and lifts you up and doesn't manipulate you or control you and push you down. You got to be in the right group and family. And you got to protect yourself. You got to protect your energy because you deserve to be happy and content, and you deserve to be feeling like you're successful and supported. And then the third thing is love. Everyone's got to be loved. And so love is a healer, but it's also a connector. It's also rocket fuel and gas in your tank to move you forward, not only from day to day and week to week, but maybe hour to hour, you know. So I always ask people this, knowing that love is the third component of what you need. For you, Jake, what would you say would be more important for you, to be loved or to be trusted?
What would be loved? I don't know, though. Depends on the situation, but...
Most people say loved because it's the connection's necessary, right?
Yeah.
But the thing that's interesting with this concept and all the things that I'm talking about, because I'm trying to create an environment of trust, right? So of all the people in my life, family and people I know that I love, there's many of those, maybe the tipping scale tips, where I wouldn't trust them with my credit card or my debit card. But if you trust somebody, you get love as a byproduct with the trust. So
that's interesting. Yeah.
If you give me your credit card and say, Jed, go get us all donuts and drinks for lunch, I'm like, wow, Jake loves me because he trusts me. I'm going to go take your debit card. I'm going to bring back donuts and the drinks. And you know I'm not going to spend one penny more than what you instructed me to go do.
Yeah.
So you got to have trust first, and then the love will be there.
I like that.
If you're just hanging out with a family member or people in your life because you feel you're obligated to love them because you're tied to them with DNA or something else, it's going to be even more unhappiness in your life because your spirit and your soul and your mind is going one direction while your life is actually staying stagnant or not even moving at all. So you got to build trust in these relationships, and communication is the biggest part of that. And it's not what you say, but it's what you do, because actions speak louder than the words. You know.
So what you do is in like just service for them and just continually doing acts of service to build that trust.
Yeah, and if you mess up, the apology languages, there's repentance, there's regret, there's how can I make it up to you. There's all these ways that people speak apologies to one another, and some people don't hear the apologies. So that's another thing. For me, it's mine's not even on the list, but for me it's promise keeping and covenant making. So if you mess up, I don't even want to hear I'm sorry. I want to hear, I own this, I did this, and because I love you, Jed, I promise, I covenant, I will not do this anymore to the best of my ability. Now, we're not perfect, and I don't expect someone, once they mess up, to never do it again. Yeah. But really, that's what sorry means, is I promise I won't do it again. If people use the word sorry like it's nothing, it actually ruins the relationship even more, because you can't trust that person, you know.
Yep.
So, you know, if I was to, I don't have my quarter, but if I was to hold up the quarter, on our money it says, "In God we trust" on it. Yeah. Right? So what are some of your favorite names for God? Do you have certain, besides God, other names that you like for God?
Creator, or the divine.
Yeah. You've heard like God is love, God is charity.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Okay.
Right?
Yep. Yep.
So one of my favorite terms for God is truth. God is truth. So if I held up that quarter, instead of it saying "In God we trust," imagine if it said "In truth we trust." So again, if something is true, it's predictable, and you can trust it, and you know it's going to be solid. So if you have truth in your relationships and in your communications, and you're broaching those hard communications with love and truth, then you're not going to lose. Rather, you're going to be A-okay and keep moving steadily forward and upward as you do those things. And you deserve to have that in your life, and other people deserve you to do that in their life.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Man, well, this has been extremely valuable to me, Jed, and I'm sure to anyone who's listening. I loved your list at the beginning that kind of talked about some of these principles, some of these things that are really good for us to just practice communication. Honestly, it's just practicing and doing some of these things that you've said. But then also the specific situations, I think, there's just so much that has to do with ourselves, which is awesome, and that trust that you talked about at the end is just really valuable and key. So if you'd like to learn more about Jed, go to achievetoday.com where you can look him up. There's a coaches section, and you can find a little bit more about him. We will put a link to that below. But then also, if you want a free consultation to go over some of the things in your life, to talk about communication, talk about, if you're struggling with your communication in your family, with your friends, with any aspect of your life, we have experts, we have coaches like Jed that can get you to a better place. And so we invite you, if you would like to improve yourself, you'd like to continually grow faster than you have ever improved before, go to achievetoday.com. You can fill out your information, and an expert will give you a call and go over every different area of your life and really give you some good value, whether you do coaching with us, whether we've got a platform that houses so much different content for you, or they'll just send you on your way with some really valuable tips and tricks to help you improve your life. So that wraps up the podcast. We hope that you'll join us next week, and thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Okay.